Do not enter this abandoned church. Seriously, this is your only warning. Over 1,000 deaths have been linked to this single location. Visitors who step foot inside after dark are said to vanish without a trace, scream until their lungs give out, or become haunted for the rest of their lives. Whatever lurks among these ancient graves does not forgive, and it does not forget. Are you ready to hear the story of the most haunted church in America? Our tale begins in the 1700s, on a remote island in the American South. The Chapel of Ease was built as a place of worship for a small, isolated community. It was meant to be a sanctuary, a beacon of hope. But from the very beginning, it seemed destined for tragedy. Construction was plagued by accidents, claiming the lives of several workers. Soon after it opened, a strange illness swept through the congregation, and violent, unseasonal storms repeatedly battered the island. Within just a few decades, dozens of people connected to the chapel had met untimely ends. By the 1800s, the locals had a name for it, the Cursed Chapel. The cemetery surrounding it became a place of fear. Graves were found marked with strange, unsettling symbols that no one could translate, appearing as if etched by an unseen hand. Terrified, families began to flee the area, abandoning their homes and their history, fearing the spirits of the chapel would claim their children next. The church was eventually abandoned, left to decay in the suffocating humidity, but its story was far from over. The first official paranormal reports started to surface in the late 1800s. Long after the last service was held, parishioners from a neighboring church, who had to pass the ruins, began sharing chilling stories. They spoke of seeing dark, human-like figures moving silently among the tombstones, their forms disappearing into the shadows. Others reported strange, ethereal lights floating above the graves at night, dancing and weaving through the crumbling markers. The most terrifying accounts were of whispered voices, calling out the names of the living, even when no one else was around. It was as if the dead knew who was watching them. A few brave souls dared to investigate, stepping onto the property after sundown. They returned with stories that would curdle your blood. They described the feeling of ice-cold hands brushing against their skin in the dark, sudden waves of inexplicable panic that made them flee for their lives in moments where they fainted, waking up miles away with no memory of how they got there. And then there were those who went to investigate and simply disappeared, swallowed by the night, never to be seen or heard from again. The local records paint a grim picture, documenting at least 40 deaths on the property between 1780 and 1900. These were the official numbers, the drownings, the strange accidents, the sudden illnesses. But local legends suggest the true number is far, far higher. They say that after dark, many more souls have vanished into the church's grasp, bringing the fictional, yet widely believed, total to over 1,000. The stories passed down through generations are bone-chilling. Grave diggers reportedly fell into open graves that appeared out of nowhere, only to have the earth swallow them whole. Visitors exploring the ruins would trip over invisible obstacles, only to look down and see the outline of an empty coffin just beneath the soil. Some claimed that spectral figures would appear at the exits, blocking their escape, their eyes glowing in the dark. The old folklore became a stern warning, a rule to live by on the island: disturb the chapel at night, and the dead will walk among you. It was a promise that the spirits guarding the grounds did not take trespassers lightly, and they were always looking for new company. As the 20th century rolled in, the chapel's reputation only grew. It became a magnet for paranormal investigators, all seeking to capture proof of the afterlife within its crumbling walls. What they found was more terrifying than they could have imagined. Multiple teams reported seeing balls of light that seemed to have their own intelligence, following them as they moved between the tombstones. They recorded the distinct sound of footsteps echoing on the stone floor of the chapel, even when everyone was standing perfectly still. Shadowy figures were seen sitting on the ruined pews, only to vanish the moment they were approached. The technology they brought seemed to fail under the influence of the place. Cameras would malfunction at critical moments. Batteries, fully charged just minutes before, would drain instantly. But the most compelling evidence came from audio recorders. They captured disembodied voices whispering in the dark, and what was truly unsettling is that these voices often spoke the first names of the investigators, as if they knew exactly who was there. Some of the most promising footage and audio recordings were mysteriously lost or corrupted, wiped clean, as if the spirits themselves were determined to keep their secrets hidden from the world. Today, the Chapel of Ease stands in ruin. Moss and vines crawl over the ancient stones, the windows are shattered, and the pews have long since collapsed. It looks like a forgotten relic of the past, but the energy here is anything but dormant. The whispers, they say, have never stopped. Visitors who ignore the warnings and venture onto the grounds after sunset come back with horrifying tales. They report unearthly screams echoing from the cemetery, the sounds of pure terror piercing the night air. Some feel the chilling sensation of shadow hands grabbing at their ankles, trying to pull them down into the earth. Others see floating lights that seem to guide them deeper into the graveyard, toward the oldest, most weathered graves. The locals know better. They refuse to set foot on the property after the sun goes down. They believe the stories. They believe the dead have claimed over 1,000 souls, and they know that these ruins are far from silent. The question is, after hearing all this, would you be brave enough to visit? The island is home to a place so feared, locals won't even speak its name after sunset. They call it the Chapel of Ease, but there is no comfort to be found within its crumbling walls. Built in the 1700s, this chapel was meant to be a place of solace for plantation families, but a devastating hurricane turned it into a mass grave, trapping over 1,000 souls. They say their spirits never left. Today, it stands as a grim monument, a place where the dead outnumber the living, and the veil between our world and theirs is terrifyingly thin. For centuries, the chapel has been a hotspot for paranormal activity, drawing in the brave and the foolish. But many who enter don't come out the same, if they come out at all. The legends surrounding this place are not just stories, they are warnings. Let's start with the hard evidence. In the late 20th century, seasoned paranormal teams, armed with the latest technology, dared to breach the chapel's silence. What they found chilled them to the bone. EMF meters, designed to detect electromagnetic fields, went haywire, spiking into the red zone with no logical explanation. There were no power lines, no cell towers, nothing that could cause such a reaction. It was as if the air itself was charged with an unseen energy. Video cameras, set up to capture any movement, recorded shadow figures flitting between the ancient tombstones. These weren't just tricks of the light. They were dark, human-shaped silhouettes that seemed to observe the investigators from the corners of the ruins, always just out of direct sight. The personal experiences were even more disturbing. Team members reported feeling an invisible force physically blocking doorways, pushing back against them with an unnerving strength. It was as if something was guarding the chapel's inner sanctum, refusing to let them pass. The atmosphere grew so heavy, so menacing, that some investigators flat out refused to continue. They heard disembodied voices, whispering threats directly into their ears, chilling phrases that seemed to promise harm. One investigator's experience became the stuff of legend within the paranormal community. As he was leaving the site, convinced he was being watched, he felt something grab him from behind and pull him backward with incredible force. He turned to find nothing but empty air. That was the last investigation he ever participated in. The official reports are unsettling, but the local stories are what truly paint a picture of the chapel's horrifying nature. These aren't just ghost stories told around a campfire. They are hushed accounts of real people who crossed a line they shouldn't have. In 1997, a young couple, drawn by the thrill of the legend, decided to explore the cemetery at night. They were never seen again. A search party found their flashlights lying on the damp ground near a cluster of graves, still switched on, casting lonely circles of light into the darkness. Their car was still parked nearby, but of the couple, there was no trace. It was as if the ground itself had swallowed them whole. Then, in 2005, Another incident added to the chapel's dark reputation. A man visiting the island, skeptical of the local folklore, went to the ruins alone. He was later found unconscious, miles away from the chapel, with no memory of how he got there. He remembered feeling a sudden, overwhelming sense of dread near the ruins, and then, nothing. He had lost hours of time. His story is not unique. Over the years, countless thrill-seekers have reported similar experiences of disorientation and lost time after visiting the site. Perhaps the most chilling accounts come from those who grew up nearby. Children who used to play near the cemetery during the day often ran home crying, telling their parents that cold hands had touched them, grabbing at their ankles from beneath the ground. Their parents would rush back, only to find no one there. The locals have a theory. They believe the very ground of the cemetery is alive, a sentient entity that guards the chapel and its secrets, and it does not like to be disturbed. Among the most consistently reported phenomena are the lights and the voices. Witnesses, from paranormal investigators to curious tourists, all describe the same thing: ghostly orbs of light, floating just above the tombstones. They don't move randomly. They follow patterns, as if tracing the steps of someone walking through the graveyard. Some have even seen these lights arrange themselves into formations, almost like a spectral procession moving towards the chapel's ruined entrance. And then there are the whispers. People hear their own names being called out from the shadows, a lure to draw them deeper into the ruins. Those who are foolish enough to follow the voice often report hearing it turn into a blood-curdling scream that echoes through the trees. It's common for visitors to see what look like shadows sitting in the collapsed pews inside the chapel, clear as day. But the moment you try to get a closer look, they vanish into thin air. Even the most hardened investigators have been forced to admit, it's not just haunted deeds alive in some way. The place has an intelligence, a malevolence, that defies all scientific explanation. Local folklore is very clear about one thing: disturbing the chapel at night is an invitation for the dead to take notice of you, and their attention is not something you want. This isn't just about seeing a ghost. It's about a curse that latches onto you. Many visitors who have ignored the warnings report suffering from sudden, inexplicable physical ailments. Some are hit with crushing chest pains that feel like a heart attack, only to have them disappear the moment they leave the property. Others are overcome with a wave of nausea so intense they can barely stand. It's as if the very air is toxic, poisoned by the sorrow and anger of the spirits trapped there. The physical manifestations are even more terrifying. People have returned to the chapel the next day to find that grave markers have been shifted, or worse, the earth around them has been dug up, as if something was trying to get out. The local warnings are stark and have been passed down for generations. Every single person who enters the grounds after dark risks being counted among the dead. Despite modern safety measures and signs posted by authorities, the chapel still claims victims. Every year, there are new reports of mysterious disappearances, unexplained accidents, and people who are simply never heard from again after boasting they would spend a night at the ruins. The curse continues, unabated. The few who have survived a night at the Chapel of Ease and lived to tell the tale share harrowing stories of their encounters. They are not tales of fleeting shadows or faint noises. They are accounts of direct, physical assault by an unseen force. Survivors consistently describe the feeling of icy cold hands grabbing their ankles and arms, holding them in place or trying to drag them towards the open graves. Some have reported the terrifying sensation of being lifted off the ground, held suspended in the air by an invisible power, before being thrown back down. The floating lights are not just distant orbs. Survivors say they appear directly over the graves, seeming to guide them towards their doom, like a trap laid by a spectral predator. Even in the bright light of day, a palpable sense of dread hangs over the chapel. The air is cold, heavy, and silent. The birds don't sing here. The usual sounds of nature are strangely absent. It's a place that feels fundamentally wrong, a scar on the landscape. The locals, who know the history and respect the power of the place, will not set foot inside the cemetery walls, not even during the day. They fear the restless souls of the more than 1,000 people buried there, souls who are not at peace, souls who are angry, and souls who are waiting. The Chapel of Ease isn't just a collection of ruins and old gravestones. It's a prison for the dead, a place where over 1,000 spirits are trapped in an eternal state of torment. And they don't want to be alone. Anyone who dares to enter after dark, anyone who scoffs at the warnings and crosses that threshold, risks becoming another prisoner, another number added to the count. So if you ever find yourself on that haunted island, and you feel the pull of the ruins, remember this story: turn back. Some doors are better left unopened. Thanks for joining us in the shadows. Subscribe to Tales of the Dark, where every story gives you a new nightmare to fear.